So, welcome everyone to our Wednesday call, and we are going to continue our series of the How to Animal Reiki with dogs. So, I love dogs. I grew up with dogs. I also grew up with cats, but I love, love, love my dogs. I've had so many great, amazing experiences, as I'm sure all of you have with your dogs, and they're just such amazing, amazing creatures. So, I just want to start off. Let me get my notes here because I don't want to miss anything because there's so much to cover about dogs. I remember when Kathleen and I went, oh God, where were we? I think we were in the UK. And we went to this little museum and it was all dedicated to World War II. And they were talking about, the different animals that helped during the war. And there were just so many dogs, like little Jack Russell Terriers that went in the tunnels with messages. And there were like shepherds and other dogs that helped. And it just like horses, they give so much. They are so attached to us humans. And I was listening to Joe Dispenza, who is, for those of you who don't know who Joe Dispenza is. So I'm also a meditation teacher. So I study a lot of just like human meditation. And Joe Dispenza is a really amazing teacher and meditator. And he actually was in a really horrible accident where he broke his back. And through meditation, he actually was able to heal his back. And when he broke his back, he was in a bike accident. The doctors told him he would never walk again. And he literally, I think within 3 months, was up doing everything normal. So the power of meditation. Hey, Monica, so good to see you. And I know, Mel is joining us. So Mel is here, yay. So what I was saying is Joe, this morning on a recording that I was listening to, he said that when you free your body of emotions, you liberate your energy. And when you liberate your energy, you can heal. And so even though he was talking about humans, I've seen this in dogs. So, when we sit with a dog and we're meditating and we help them to feel safe, to feel seen, to feel loved, to feel cared for, they can actually start to release the trauma and the emotions that they're hanging on to. And then through that releasing of those emotions, then they can start to really heal, right? So it's what we're doing when we sit in meditation seems really incredibly passive, but it's not. We're allowing the animal, be it a dog, a cat, or a horse, or whoever, to feel supported. And that's where the real healing occurs. So I've always said, as animal Reiki practitioners, we are not healers. And I think that, hey, Cindy, thanks so much for joining us. I think that one of the things that COVID taught us, and I've said this over and over and over again, is that we aren't healers, because with all the Reiki healers that are out there, COVID would have been much less had we all had this magical power to heal. We're all on our own healing path, and that includes animals too. So when we go in, hey, Carmen, thanks so much for joining us. When we go in with the mindset, I'm going to heal you, I'm going to fix you, that we're saying to the animal, you're broken and you need me, the high and mighty human, to fix you. That sets a really bad energetic stage, right? Because we're telling the animal, you're broken. The animal, dogs, we're talking about dogs. Dogs aren't attached to their bodies like we are. We're very attached to our bodies. So if I lost an arm, believe me, it would ruin my entire life. If a dog loses a leg, it's like, oh, okay. And they are off and running, right? Because they're not attached to their body. And that's really important for us to remember, that when we're going to sit with a dog or any animal, that we see them as whole, that we see who they are inside. And I've shared this story many times. When Kathleen had cancer, she quit being Kathleen, this incredible animal Reiki, warrior and creator and all these things. She became Kathleen with cancer. And we do that to each other, right? We do that to our own animals. But if we can see beyond the physical and see their true light, their true heart, that's where healing can occur. So when we're going to do any type of session with an animal, we always want to make sure that we are very grounded and that we can be practicing the all is well, right? So if we go in with a dog and the dog has mange, we can actually see beyond that mange and see the dog spirit. And by doing that, we're actually helping the dog to feel seen, heard, loved, appreciated, like we talk about. And that's so important, because in that space, Now true healing can occur. Now the dog can let go. So, if I'm sick and I want to heal, there's things that might be stopping me from that, right? I might be thinking I'm never going to heal, or this might happen, or that might happen. And that's why the placebo effect works so well with humans, right? You can give me a pill and go, oh, Leah, this is going to cure you. It's helped millions of people. It's going to cure you too. But, oh, okay, my mindset says this is going to cure me. But we can't do that with animals. Animals don't, the placebo effect doesn't work. So when we are working with dogs or whoever, we always want to have that pure mind. Hey, T, thanks for coming. We always want to have that pure mind and that pure intention of just holding space. And it's so, so important. So let's get into what we would do for dogs. So there's really going to be probably 3 different situations that you would have if you're sharing Reiki with a dog. So one would be you're offering Reiki at their home. So like you're going to someone's house, you're going to share, be it a friend or a relative or whoever, you might be going to see them. Another way you might be, and we're not going to talk about our own personal animals, because our own personal dogs and our own personal animals, they act a certain way with us. They know us deeply. We're going to be talking just about animals, dogs you don't know. So you're going to be either going to someone's house, or you would be going to the shelter and you're going to be offering Reiki at a shelter, or you're going to be doing a distance session. So I'm going to start with offering Reiki at someone's home. So when you're going to be doing that, you always want to make sure that you're grounding yourself. Whether you're going to the shelter, whether you're doing a distance session, we always want to ground ourselves. So we do that through our breath, like the breath that we always practice here, just breathing into your belly, expanding your belly, and releasing that breath out your body, either through envisioning light coming out or just envision your breath coming out. But that is your energy. And remember, animals communicate with energy. So we always want to make sure that we're incredibly grounded and solid, right? We don't want to go in there feeling stressed, feeling worried, feeling scattered, because our energy will feel like that. And it'll put the animal off. It'll put the dog off. And if there's other animals in the home, other cats, dogs, it could create chaos. So we always want to make sure that we're nice and grounded. And what that breath does, when we breathe into our belly, when we expand our belly, we're actually making that connection to the earth. So we're making that connection to a very grounded space within us. So then we go inside the house. So we'll talk about doing it for someone else's animals first. And you go inside the house and you greet the person. Now, let me back up for 1 second. One really important thing that you need to do, and this is so important, and I encourage you to do it every single time you're going to go do a session with any animal. The night before, connect with that animal. The night before, say to the animal, and this isn't animal communication, you just go into your meditative space, you connect with the animal, either by a picture, maybe you want to look at a picture, or by their name, or by the person that they're connected to, and you say, I'm coming tomorrow. I would love to share a beautiful meditative space with you. You can join me or not join me. It's completely up to you. I'm just coming because your mother has asked for help. And then that's all you have to do. You just have to put it out there, and you don't have to wait for a response. This isn't animal communication. It's just you letting the animal know, the dog know in this case, that you're coming. Now, the reason this is so, so, so important is because animals feel our energy. They connect with us immediately. So I can guarantee you, when you go to that house or go to the shelter, go wherever, that dog is going to be a little less freaked out by you. So definitely write this down, do this. Make sure you connect the night before. And don't worry about getting an answer back. It's not important. What's important is that you're just saying energetically in your mind, I'm coming. I would love to see you. I am here to share Reiki. I'm so excited, right? And make sure you're saying, I'm so grateful that I get this opportunity, right? We're showing gratitude, we're showing excitement, we're showing love. So then when you show up to the house, you can talk for a couple minutes to the person. And I always encourage people, do not get the life history of the animal. Do not get all the pains and all the things the person wants to have healed. And the reason for that being is that we can get caught up with the person in what's happening to the dog. So if the person tells us, oh, my dog has cancer and she's in so much pain and this is happening and that is happening, then when we're sitting there in this space with the animal, we could start thinking that, because we're human. I mean, and we're empathetic and we're compassionate. So we might be like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. And you don't want to do it. And Kathleen has a great story. Well, we all have these, but I love Kathleen's because it was when she was at an old barn, and one of the horses was going to UC Davis. And I think I shared this maybe last week. And she was trying to concentrate on, just being in the space with the horse. His name was Peru. And her mind just wandered to, oh my gosh, what if he doesn't make it? Da, da, da. And Peru just kind of went, what? And then walked away. And she's like, no, no, no. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking about the negative. So she went back into her space, beautiful space. Here comes Peru, comes, puts his head in her chest. She starts, oh, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. And then boom, her mind starts. So she said this happened like 3 or 4 times. The horses will tell you, they'll walk away. Sometimes dogs and cats or other animals, they may not. So we just want to make sure that we're always catching ourselves and staying in the positive. So knowing as little as possible is best, because we're not here to cure anything. We're here to support the dog and allow him to decide what he wants to release, how he wants to heal. It is completely up to the dog. So when you go in the house, you're going to see the person, you're going to talk to them for a few minutes, and then let's pay attention to the person. The dog is having issues sometimes because of the person. So what we want to do is we want to ask the person to join us. And the easiest way to do that would be to offer a chair session. So for those of you who know the Let Animals Lead method and maybe other methods, this simple chair treatment where all the hand positions are above the head. And when we work on the human, the reason why this is so effective is that the human starts to focus more on themselves and what's happening with you and less on the animal. And so the dog has time to just relax. And a lot of times, I think 100% of the time I've done this, the dog has gone, oh. It's like huge sigh of relief because their person is finally relaxing. Because whether or not they mean to, a lot of times the human in the house is anxious, upset about what's going on. So their energy is like this. And so the dog just needs to have their energy to calm down. Now, let's say you don't know how to do a chair treatment, or the person doesn't want a chair treatment. What you can do in that case is you can say, hey, why don't you sit with me and I'll walk you through a really simple meditation. And then this can be your time where you don't have to walk them through a long, guided meditation. You can just tell them, give them the simple practice of breathing in through your nose, bringing it down deep into your belly, expanding your belly, and then releasing your breath out, either your mouth or your nose, and just focusing on that breath and making sure their breath is really gentle and you're not like, just a nice, gentle, even breath. And then give them the all is well mantra and just say, it might seem like rote memorization or it's not really true, but it'll help you after, we're done with our session, after a half an hour session. So give the person the breathing techniques and then go into your session. Don't worry about what the dog does. So a lot of times what happens is the dog will test you. The dog will be like, you said I can come in and out of the room, but let's see if that's true. And they might leave the room. They might leave the room to go get a drink. They might leave the room to go eat. They might leave the room to go lay down in another room where they feel more comfortable. They may not feel comfortable laying in front of you, and that's okay. Just stay centered. And backing up a little bit, it's always a good idea. And we have this great handout in SARA. So if you join as a community member in SARA, you'll get this handout. Allie right now is actually creating a community member kind of like document bank, so that community members have access to some of the same documents that SARA members have, like the official practitioners and teachers. So if you join as a community member, then, hey, Liza, so good to see you. Then you will have access to this. But we have this really great handout that's like what people can expect from a distant or an in-person session. So it's just a great thing. But we always want to make sure that we're telling them that we're going to allow the dog to come in and out. So make sure they're never like trapped in a room with you, if at all possible. Now, if there's a chance the dog's going to run out in the street or something like that, yeah, of course, you got to keep him. But really letting any animals in the house, including the dog that you're working with, come in and out. That's really important. And you can just share that for a second with the person so they're not like, oh my gosh, the dog is leaving. That's okay. So we allow the dog to go. And a lot of times, if we stay in that space, the dog will come back. And signs of acceptance from a dog will be sighing, will be laying down, maybe even just standing still. So one dog that I went to do a session with was very hyper, and he did settle down fairly quickly, but he wouldn't lay down. He just wanted to stand by his person. And he just kind of kept gazing off. But I knew he was accepting it because he wasn't getting upset. And in fact, the postman came and knocked at the door and left a package, and he didn't bark. And his person said after the session, she's like, that was so rare. He always barks. So there are little signs and more obvious signs like that where an animal will show you that they're accepting what you're sharing. But don't get hung up on, oh, he has to lay down, he has to go to sleep, he has to sigh. Some dogs will lay down, they'll start snoring. Some dogs will, just kind of lay down and watch you. Some dogs might stare at you the whole time. There's all kinds of different reactions, but don't get hung up on how it looks, because it could look different every single time. Just allow yourself that space. Now, if you're in someone's home and their dog is like freaking out and barking, and just allow the animal time to settle down. And you can do that by just sitting and just talking softly to the person. And talking softly is a really key thing here, because animals respond to soft talking. So if the person's trying to talk to you and they're all upset about their animal, you can just very softly talk like this and say, we're just going to bring our energy down and we're going to talk. And as their energy comes down, the animal's energy, the dog's energy, will start to come down. So afterwards, when you're all done, I really highly encourage you to talk to the person about what happened, but talk in a really soft.
Your call has been.
Because what happens is, super me, mute all. What happens is that when your attention is no longer on the dog, and your energy, your attention's to someone else, that energy that you've created is still going, but your attention is completely off the dog. It's talking to their human. And so now the dog can really relax. The dog might just go and just close its eyes and go to sleep. I've had that happen so many times at the shelter when I was volunteering at the shelter. And, someone would come in either to talk to me about what I was doing or talk to me about the dog or whatever was happening. And the dog would go to sleep when we were talking. So this is something you might want to consider, but making sure that you're not saying anything negative about the dog or about the experience. And also, this is your time, because a lot of people will say, oh, what messages did you get? What did my dog say to you? What did you see? And this is your chance to say, Animal Reiki is not animal communication. So if you're an animal communicator, you can say, but I am an animal communicator. If you would like me to do a session, that's a different price. And I'm happy to talk to your dog. And then you could ask the dog, maybe the dog won't want to share anything with you. Maybe during the Reiki session, you got something, but that doesn't necessarily mean the dog wants to share it with their person or talk about it. They might just be sharing something. So don't get hung up on messages or what you see, because remember, it's all perception. It's your perception. It's how you are perceiving the information and how you are going to translate that. So as an animal Reiki practitioner, we never want to do that, because we don't want people to be confused about animal Reiki and animal communication. They're both two very separate modalities that are very important to keep pure on their own. I know, there are animal Reiki people out there who mix animal communication, and it's just not a good thing to do, because animal Reiki is passive. Animal communication, as we talked about, is active. So you don't want to upset the session by then turning and saying, oh, do you want to say something? We want to keep it in this beautiful, calm energy. And so then you're just going to make sure you thank the dog, make sure you thank the person, and then you're going to leave, right? So the signs of acceptance we've talked about. One thing that they might do is they might drool too. So drooling is something that happened to me recently, and it was really quite funny because I'd never had a dog drool. So that's something that they might do. It's not like something's wrong. It's just they might just feel so relaxed they start to drool. Now, when we talk about issues that Reiki may or may not be able to conquer, and some things like aggression, separation anxiety, fear, those things can be so deeply rooted that Reiki cannot help them. And the reason I say that is I'm going to share a story, and I hope I don't cry. I'm going to share a story about two very important dogs, my dog and Kathleen's dog. So Kathleen adopted her dog when it was 5 weeks old. And she came from a mother that had been abused in a really horrific situation when she was pregnant. So probably a lot of that energy was transferred down to the sweet dog. And for the first couple of years of Mystic's life, she was pretty good. But as time went on, she started to get more and more aggressive and just kind of fearful, just like, and she resource guarded everything, a leaf, whatever. So she started to reach out and snap at people, and she bit quite a few people in her little short lifetime of 6 years. When she was 2, I got my dog Titus, who was a stray, and he was a pit bull boxer mix. And for a long time, he was really wonderful, but he was also very fearful. And yes, thanks, Alice, for saying that animal communication and animal Reiki are separate. And so anyway, so Titus comes to me, he's fearful, but he's a good dog. And he gets along with other dogs, but he starts showing weird behaviors. So as he grows up, he becomes aggressive, but it's a fear-based aggression. It's not, I'm an alpha dog, I'm aggressive. It's fear-based. At home, he is a complete angel. Outside in the real world, he's not. Now, which was really funny, I would take him to work with me, and he had like 10 dog friends that he completely loved. And there was a puppy that came to work, and I was really worried that Titus was going to attack the puppy. And instead, Titus was so incredibly gentle with this puppy. He was just an amazing dog. He was my best friend. But here he is. He's getting Reiki daily. Mystic is getting Reiki daily, sending positive thoughts. Loved it. Nothing is changing their deep set fear, aggression, and anger, right? So I had many trainers work with Titus, and he just couldn't let it go when we were on walks. He just couldn't release that tension. He would walk with his tail down. He would like shake sometimes. It was just so painful for him to be out in the real world, separate from and it wasn't like the real world. He could be out in the world, have a great time. It was when dogs came by, he would just get really upset. So Mystic finally bit Kathleen's husband very badly. He's a pathologist, and she ripped his hand. And so it was on Kathleen's birthday, September 20th. And she was like, well, we have to put Mystic down, but I'm not going to put her down on my birthday. So she called me upset on her birthday. And immediately a thought flashed into my head, I'm going to have to put Titus down. And I thought, why did I think that? That is the weirdest thought to think. So the next day, Mystic is being put down. Oh, but I have to back up. I have to tell you the most important thing. The most important thing about the story is the only dog that Mystic would tolerate was Titus. So when I would take Titus up to see Kathleen, Mystic would attack Titus. And Titus did the weirdest thing. He would never growl, snap, or do anything back to her. He would belly crawl to her, blood dripping from his face, belly crawl to her. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And then she would calm down and everything would be fine. Or we'd be on a walk and she'd attack him for like smelling in the same part. And he would just back up and be like, okay, it's okay. So he was the only dog that could be around her and tolerate her. And he was the only dog she would tolerate being around her and not like go into a vicious attack. So they had this relationship that was really strange because I'd seen Titus he was a black dog, and black dogs have a tendency to get attacked. He'd been in fights with dogs, but he never drew blood, and he always fought back. I mean, he always was loud and got back in their face. Never did I see him act the way he did with Mystic. So Mystic gets put down on the 21st, and I'm out with Titus, and we're walking with my employee's dog, and it's a 9-month-old puppy, sweet dog. And Titus just turns on that dog and goes for the neck and the belly. And he'd never done that. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. Now, Titus had a history. He bit our neighbor and he bit another dog. And when he bit our neighbor, for whatever reason, I was thinking he was going to have to be put down. Nobody wanted to put him down. And I was ready to put him down. I mean, because he bit somebody. And you can't train that out of, you can try to make their world small so they don't ever come into that. You try to protect them, but you can't train that out of a dog. Once a dog is a biter, they're a biter always. And he was a 70-pound pit bull that was all muscle. And so I told him, you bite again, and you're going to have to be put down, and this was like a year before. And we had this whole emotional thing with him. And so he's out, he attacks Chase's puppy. He wouldn't stop. We were screaming at him. And so Chase picked him up, and thank God he didn't turn on Chase. And he just kind of snaps out of it. And I go home and I'm like, I'm going to have to put him down. And we had to put him down. And it was the day after Mystic was put down. And, he got put down 2 days later. So we had to call the vet to come over and put him down. And it was horrible. But I share this, not to share this tragic story, but to share this to tell you, there are certain issues you can't train out of animals, but also to share with you, animals come into our life for a purpose, for a season, right? And we don't know why. And even Titus leaving, and it was so incredibly painful and emotional. And he was my best friend. And I, to this day, this was in 2018 that happened. My heart just breaks for that dog. I loved him so much. But strangest thing happened. He left, and I was getting some messages about a dog that needed to be rescued from Shadows Fund. It's a pit bull rescue. And she was like a little pocket pit. Her name was Reba. She's like 28 pounds. And she was in a homeless camp. And she was disabled. Like she could walk, but she shook. She had some kind of neurological thing they could not figure out. She went to Davis and everything. They couldn't figure it out. So they were asking me if I would take her. And I wasn't sure. So I was getting acupuncture one day, and I was laying on the table, and the acupuncturist left me, to sit there and do my thing. And I was thinking about Reba, and I'm like, do I adopt this dog? I don't think I want to do this. And all of a sudden I felt a lick on my hand, and I jumped because I'd never had anything like that happen before. And I was like, oh my God. And I just knew Titus was like, yes, you need to adopt her. And she came to our house exactly 5 years to the day from when Titus came into my life, November 18th. And, it just was another just confirmation that our animals come to us, especially dogs. I've had this happen so much with dogs. These weird situations with dogs come to me that are like, so much has to happen for this one dog to get to me. And it's a bigger web than we could ever see. So I share this kind of to just tell you, one, there's certain things that Reiki can't fix, but also that if you have a dog or you lose a dog leaves you, there is another animal that's right behind them, another animal that they could be making room for. And I know Titus felt like, Titus was with me through my divorce. He was with me when I moved to Portland. And I know that Titus was like, Mystic was leaving. They had some bond, so he left that way. But also he brought Reba to me. And that was really amazing and beautiful. So, when I'm kind of veering off from the whole dog Reiki, but just know that if your dog is sick or if your dog passes, know in your heart, your dog is not going to leave you alone. Your dog is going to make room for another deserving animal to come to you. And I really, truly believe this. I could go on for hours and hours about all the different ways dogs have come to me, and so many mountains had to be moved in order for that dog to get to me to either be fostered or for me to adopt that dog. It's just been crazy. So just be open, right? Be open. And if you do have a dog and the dog passes, just be grateful for that time that you've had, because it is such an incredible blessing to have dogs in our lives. So that was a long story, but I thought you would kind of enjoy the story about Mystic and Titus, even though it was very sad. It was just incredible, that bond that they had. And it also just kind of re-emphasized to me that there is this beautiful web that the animals are all connected to, and they all understand what's going on. And there's plans that are going on that we humans maybe will never understand, but they're here to help us. So now we go to the shelter and we're going to offer Reiki. It's so important that you center yourself. You've got to center yourself in your car. Before you walk into the shelter, you've got to center that energy. And then when you go to work with the dog, again, you want the night before, you may not know who you're working with at the shelter. So just blink at the shelter, say, I'm coming. I'm going to be sharing my light and energy with all of you, right? So you come in, you have a dog. Most of the dogs at the shelter are going to be hyper and bouncing like this. So now you're going to have to be flexible with your meditation. You might have to stand, you might have to sit in a chair, you might have to be like with your back to them so that when they jump on you, you can turn your body and they're not jumping in your face or accidentally, like, some dogs get excited, they might nip you in your face. Or if you're with a pit bull, they have huge skulls. They could accidentally clock you in the chin. My pit bull did that to me so many times. I have to be so careful when I go home and he gets excited. I have to keep that big old head, and his head's like this big. But you want to keep yourself safe. So, turn to the, yeah, exactly, Mel. Turn to the side. You also want to make sure that you're just like really bringing yourself into that meditation. Don't worry that the dog is jumping. Your mind's going to think, oh my gosh, this isn't working. Trust me, it is working. As long as you stay focused, you'll notice that the dog is jumping a little less. They may not stop jumping, but they're jumping a little less, or they might stop for a second and then start jumping and then stop for a second. It's because they're fighting that feeling of calm. Okay. They're in a shelter. They're not even sure what's going on. The more you do this, the more relaxed they will become. So maybe your first session with the dog is like, they're all excited, but trust me, the second session with that dog, they understand you're not there to walk them. You're not there to give them food. You're there just to share the space. So the second session with the dog, whether it's in person or even distantly, they're going to calm down. The third one, they're going to calm down even more. So by the fourth one, they are completely relaxed. So if you're at the shelter, you always want to make sure you follow up with 3 other sessions, and they can be distant. They don't even have to be in person. You can even pick a dog at a shelter and send all distance sessions. You're not going to know how they react. But for me, when I was volunteering at the shelter, it was really nice to be able to go in and do an in-person session. And then I'd do like 3 distance, and then I'd go back the next weekend. I would go in and the dog would be completely calm when I came in, because they would know, oh, you're the Reiki lady. Okay, this is what we do. There's so many amazing things that can happen at the shelter due to you going in and sharing Reiki with an animal. What can happen is that through the process of you offering this beautiful space where they can feel loved, seen, heard, in that space, their true nature starts to come out. Their true light starts to come out. I remember this one dog I was working with. She was a cattle dog. She's completely depressed at the shelter, didn't want to move. I would come in, she would just sit there, lay there, just ignore me, wouldn't even look at me. So I did, I think, 8 sessions with her. And she'd been there a while. She'd been there a few months without anybody even looking at her. And after 2 weeks, some guy who had a ranch came in, saw her, fell in love with her, adopted her. I didn't even think this was early on. I didn't even think she was getting anything out of my sessions. I was just like, she wouldn't look at me. She wouldn't do anything. I mean, she just, even after like giving distance sessions, when I went in like the second week, nothing. She gave me nothing. But obviously, she took something from it because her light started to come out. So don't get discouraged if you don't get any reaction from a dog. Just know that this beautiful energy that you're sharing is being received in some form. May not be 100%, but in some form, you're affecting that animal. So in a shelter, we always want to keep our thoughts positive. That's really important in the shelter. It's going to be really hard in the shelter. And then just keep yourself safe. But everything else is exactly like you would. You're going to meditate. You're not going to focus on what's wrong. You're going to see the dog's perfect light, and you're going to share Reiki. Dogs are a little bit challenging if they're scared in a corner, like if they're shaking, then you definitely want to turn your back. You just want to say what's happening and turn your back, or you want to go in a different room. You can introduce yourself and say, you know what, I'm going to go to a different spot and I'm going to share Reiki, and you can take some if you want. And then that way you can go by their cage or their enclosure later. Sometimes little dogs are in like littler cages. And sometimes it's not, if you stand there, it's kind of imposing. So just always be aware of your body and what you're doing and how the animal is reacting to you. Are they acting like they're receptive, or are they growling at you? Or are they like, do they have hackles up? Are they snarling? In that case, just back up or go around the corner and just say, I'm gonna share Reiki, and you can take as much or as little as you want. Remember, we're not sharing anything, we're not directing energy to them, we're not trying to fix or heal anything. So it's just love that you're sharing. Remember, you're the sun, you're sharing your beautiful light, your love. Um, I've been talking a ton, and I don't know if Mel is still on here because I think she had to leave. Darn it. I'll share her story though, because she did send it to me. So I thought this was really great. So she did 2 distant sessions with animals. Let me get her. There it is. So she said 3 Mondays ago, her boss brought her 5-year-old dog, Riley, to the vet. He was very sick, and Mel could feel her distress when she told her about him. So she asked if she could send distant Reiki to Riley while he was in the hospital, and her boss said yes. And the vet told them it was possibly either an aggressive form of cancer or an incurable blood disease or a curable disorder. So Mel said she knew what they were testing for. His red blood count was low due to bone marrow weight. His bone marrow wasn't producing enough red blood cells, and his liver enzymes were high. A rare form of anemia was also on the table. So her instincts told her to focus on those 3 things, all while sending him relaxing and healing energy. All the positive intentions to normalize his test results. I sent out, I sent Oh, all the positive intentions she sent out came back, confirmed he was slowly getting better. On Friday, I told her, I think you're going to get really good news. She was skeptical, understandably so. She wasn't sure what the newest test would be. But then on Tuesday, she said she came into the office and said that Riley was doing so well that he was actually doing better than before. Now, Mel was focused on the blood tests. I don't really advise that. Mel's been doing this for a while, so I'm fine with her saying that, her doing that. That seemed to work for her. And obviously, if she's doing that, she's focused not on like, I hope you get better. She's focused on the tests, like sending Reiki to these tests, right? You can do that. Just make sure you're not sending that to the dog. Oh, I want you to get better. I want you to feel healed. That's where it gets negative. So she was doing it to the test, and I can get behind that. The other one was Oliver is another dog that she's been working with for a few weeks now. He needed knee surgery, and she did Reiki for him last year too. He's tore some ligaments. She went to his owner's house for a few sessions to prep him, and then she sent a distance session on the night before his surgery. His surgery was a success, and now she's doing post-op sessions for a few weeks. And he's walking with hardly a limp, and his vet even said his incision healed super quick. So there's ways that we can help animals. And distant, I love distant, and I'm going to let Jemmy share a situation that she had with distant. I love distant because distant, like if you go into the shelter and you're working with a dog and you don't get that response, they're just like so spazzy, or they're fearful, or they're shut down. When you go home to do distant Reiki, sometimes it's a lot easier because you're in your own home. You're comfortable, you can play music, you don't have any distractions, and now your full focus can be on the meditation and on yourself and creating that beautiful energy to share. And, you can do a distant session however you want. If you want to have a picture of the dog, you can do that. If you want to have the name of the dog, written on a piece of paper and you have it in your hands, you can do that if you want. Whatever you can do to bring to mind the dog and that helps you stay in that space, that's totally fine, as long as you're not beaming or sending Reiki to the dog. That's really, really important. Remember, we're just creating this beautiful energy, and trust yourself, the dog can feel it. As soon as you bring the dog to mind, the dog feels the connection. And then it's up to them. And we go through the same thing we do distant. I'm going to share this beautiful space with you. You can take as much or as little as you want, or nothing at all. So Jemmy had an experience with a distant treatment, and I want her to share it because she asked me, oh, is this right? Is this in the let animals lead method? And I thought this was a really great time to share this with you. So Jemmy, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. So, my yoga teacher, I was doing an online class, and she mentioned at the start of the class that, she was really kind of anxious because her dog wasn't doing well. Like she had woken up because her dog was vomiting overnight, and so she was just really worried about her. But I could tell that Lisa, my teacher, she was really anxious now too. So I offered, after the class, I sent her a message. I said, "Hey, do you want, if you'd like, I can offer, I'd be happy to offer Reiki to you and your dog." And she wasn't really very familiar. Hmm? Oh, okay.
Oh, no,
And
no,
she
no.
wasn't really
Mel, raise your hand. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
so she wasn't really very familiar, with Reiki. So I didn't go into a huge description, but just said, look, it just like a, kind of like a healing energy, but it's just a way to help, relax you and your dog, and just told her kind of what to expect, and just to kind of, just rest and relax. And then I would just spend a few minutes to ground myself. And that's an energy for maybe about 20, 25 minutes. But then what I did is I knew, like Leah was just saying, not to beam the energy to the dog, but I said, well, but I know Lisa wants the energy and I want to kind of beam energy to her. So what I did is, instead of just creating a bubble of energy around myself and inviting Ruby the dog to come into that energy, I really tried to focus that bubble of energy on Lisa and invite the dog to come into Lisa's energy and relax with Lisa. And I felt like that was really effective. Like, I could really feel the energy with Lisa. I kind of sensed like Ruby kind of relaxing, and I sensed Ruby kind of just be kind of relieved, like what Leah talked about with when the animal is kind of holding on to that tension from the human, and just being able to kind of let go of that. Um, and I would say after about the 20-minute mark or so, I just kind of felt this voice kind of like stop. Like, that's enough energy. So I kind of so I so I sent a message to Lisa. I said, okay, I'm stopping the energy. And she said that she and Ruby both really relaxed. And I saw her online for the next session, yoga class, a couple days later, and she just thanked me again that she and Ruby were both somewhat relaxed. And I did ask too, before I started, just what Ruby looked like. And she actually sent me a picture of Ruby, which I think was helpful, just like a kind of picture
Mhm.
in my mind, just kind of I wasn't directly sending the energy to Ruby, just kind of knowing what she looked like. So I could kind of picture her curled up kind of next to Lisa. But I just found that really effective to kind of just shift how I was directing the energy, so I could kind of focus on the human and then invite the dog into that healing space.
I love that so much because, obviously we never want to focus on the dog, like you said, Jemmy, but you were focused on the person. And so, like people Reiki, right? We're beaming, we're doing this, we're focusing on chakras, maybe, we're doing all kinds of things. And that's totally fine because people need that, but animals don't. And I loved how Jemmy invited Ruby to support her person because a lot of the issues that these animals have are not because of anything they've done. It's what's been inflicted upon them by humans. And sometimes it's not because we're being mean, it's just our own energy. We're stressed. Or like, in the yoga teachers, she was stressed out, and it was starting to affect Ruby. So instead of focusing on Ruby, empowering Ruby to then support her person and to have Jemmy's help, that was probably really effective. And it's probably why it was so strong too. And I love that you heard stop. You know what? If you hear something like that in your head, go ahead, stop. Trust your intuition, trust your instinct, but don't try and read into it. Like I loved how Jemmy said she just heard something. She's like, oh, okay, I'm going to follow this intuition. Don't sit and go, oh, I think I should stop, or just allow yourself to do the 30 minutes. That's why we always say, have your time and do your time, unless, something like what happened with you, Jemmy. Jemmy, thank you so much for sharing that because it's really important. There is no right or wrong when we're doing it with people because that's different. But with animals, we have to follow a certain protocol. And this is why Jemmy reached out and said, I don't know if I did this right. Could you kind of guide me? It's like, yes, you absolutely did. Because she not only did she not beam at Ruby, she empowered Ruby. And I wanted her to share that with all of you because you can take that. I took that. I was like, oh, wow, that's so, so powerful. And it's something that I'm going to do. So thank you so much for that, Jemmy. I really appreciate it. And I'm so sorry. I didn't see you. I don't have my glasses on. I need to wear my glasses on. I refuse. So here, if you want to unmute yourself, I don't know if Mel can hear me.
Yep.
Oh, there
I
she
can hear you.
is. Hi.
So what I did was I did a distance session. I was never near the dog. I never met the dog, but I put the intention separately to everything else. So while I was doing a Reiki session distantly with Riley, but separately, I ended up sending good intentions so that everything would come back, like his levels would come back up. So it was more like not that I'm focusing on the test, but like that his system, like all his levels started coming up inside, and that the blood test would come out better again. But it was like separate to actually doing Reiki with Riley, because sending it, my mom, she had surgery done too not too long ago. So the night before, I did a really good session. I just sent it to my mom, and she had the best. She had no idea what was happening, like, but I ended up mentioning it to her afterwards. I didn't tell her, and it was the same thing. So I sent it to her, but then I also sent it out separately to her surgery team, and just to send the good energy out. And that's what I was doing with, the test results and all that stuff, because I knew what was going on. So I was just trying to promote the universe to help raise all that back up, because the environment itself also has to be the ideal. It has to be working. You have to work together with it. You know what I mean? If the environment is broken, then it's not going to work. So separately, also sending distant Reiki too, because you can send distant Reiki out time and space. It doesn't matter, or situation, places, anything. So that was a separate section with it, but it just, I knew the next day the test results would come back and they would start to normalize. So when that started to happen, I was like, I'm going to keep sending out the good intentions for it. And she literally, a week later, she was just beaming. She was crying. She's like, oh my God, they don't know why it happened so quickly. And I'm like, and it's just because I was supporting them. I was supporting the medical staff. I was supporting the vet, and I was supporting Riley in his healing journey, and also their family, because I kept getting visions of her being very, very stressed out and stuff. And so I sent it to her too. So I did it was like multitasking going around.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, we just have to make sure, because again, I said, earlier, you've been doing this a while, Mel. So for those of you who maybe haven't been doing it as long, it's just really important to keep your thoughts separate. Like, if you're sending Reiki to the person or to the vet or to the test, that it's just pure energy. It's just pure love that you're supporting that for the best possible outcome. And then separately, you're just sharing love and light with the dog, and you're not trying to fix or heal or change anything, which is what you did, Mel. And so thank you so much for clarifying that. I really appreciate it. And so good to see you. I've missed you. So we have a few minutes. Do you have any questions specific to dogs and Reiki? Because I know I've covered like a lot of just generalization, but if there's any situations that maybe you've dealt with dogs that you want to ask a question about, and you can just, Jill.
Yeah, so one question I have, I thought it was very interesting that Reiki is not going to work for fear and aggression in a dog. So
I'm not going to say it never does, because it could, depending on how deep set the issues are. Like with Titus and Mystic, it just was too much. It was too deep.
So how have you handled in the past someone asking Reiki when their dog is in that type of situation? How have you handled that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So how I handle that is that, like, look, first of all, the energy is going to help support your dog no matter what. But what your dog releases is really up to your dog. So it could be that maybe they don't release their aggression. Like I have a aggressive dog, Shrek, the other pit bull, but he's such a love. And when he gets Reiki, it really helps his arthritis. It helps his, his body. So it could be that the dog will have some other kind of clearing or healing, or maybe nothing at all. It's just a relaxation for them. So I would say, if they're looking for help with a dog behaviorist, what Reiki can do is be a partner with that. So I would say, you might want to find someone who specializes in aggression for dogs. But what I can do is I can actually help support that so that your dog feels supported during this process with the trainer. and that your dog knows that it's not broken, or you're just helping it, trying to release something so it has a happier life. So that's something that you can say. And there are situations where a dog will let go. They'll just let go. I mean, I've seen dogs at the shelter do that. You know, they were like dog aggressive, and then all of a sudden they're able to walk with other dogs and they're fine. And oh, thank you so much for joining us, Robin. Thanks for coming. And so, you know, we can't say never. This is absolutely never going to help, but it's for deep-seated fear that's like, you know, traumatized from birth, because I think that probably Titus had it from the womb. Definitely Mystic had it in the womb, that it's something that's carried with them, and they just, it's innate in them. They can't help themselves. So yeah, just always making sure that you're sharing what it is that you do, which is right, just supporting the dog. And then it's really up to the dog to release what they no longer want to carry. But again, the more they get it, the more they are feel supported, the more they can let go. Now, here's an interesting concept. I don't think Kathleen, I mean, at least not regularly, and I know I didn't have anyone else offering Reiki to Titus, like maybe if he got sick or something, but I didn't have anybody offering Reiki to Titus. Maybe if I would have been more diligent about that and hired somebody to actually do sessions with him, maybe it would have been a different outcome. You know, I don't know. With Shrek, I have had people send Reiki, and it's hard to tell with him though, because he's such a love bug, and you just get him out. And sometimes he's not as bad as others. So who knows? But he's also not around dogs very often at all either. So I don't know, you know, it's a really interesting idea, and something we probably need to do a little study on. It's like, you know, if it's your own dog, maybe a really deep-seated issue can't be released, but maybe if they're getting regular Reiki, because I know at the shelter, you know, there was a lot of you know, successful stories with dogs that weren't getting adopted. There was this one Akita that she'd come to the shelter, and she was there for like 6 months, and then she got adopted out to this guy, and they told the guy, don't let anyone get in her face. And he did. He let a kid get in her face. She snapped at the kid. He brought her back. Her name was Casey. And she was in her little, I mean, she was like, they had apartments at the Humane Society of Silicon Valley. She's in there for a very long time again, like months. And she started to crash. She started to howl. She stopped eating. And so they asked me, will you go in and work with her? So I worked with her, and I did one session in person, and then I did 3 distant, and then I came back. And the Saturday that I came back, there was this couple. I was in there with her. We were doing Reiki, and she was so cute, because the first session I had with her, she was bouncing off the walls. She was just all over me, right? She's a big Akita. She could barely settle down. But then I did 3 sessions with her. I went back that Saturday, totally calm. And I had my hands like this on my lap. She put her little paw in my hand. And so we were sitting there, and this couple kept looking at her and reading her sign. And she was just like, she looked at them and she just sighed and looked away. And I told her, I said, you know, Casey, and this is really powerful to do to an animal. Yeah, Hakita's deep souls, exactly. And I said to her, you know, you don't have to wait for someone to pick you. You can pick your people. And, you know, I just said that to her silently, and we're just in there together. And then finally the staff came in and they said, hey, these people want to see Casey, so you have to stop. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I was going to leave anyway. So they took her up to the front, and I had to walk past the front to get out when I got all my stuff to go out to my car. And Casey's standing there with the 2 people. And this has never happened to me before. I'm walking out, and she jumps in front of me. Her tail is wagging. Her mouth is open. Her tongue is out. And I just heard clear as day, I found them. I mean, it was just like, what? I've never had. And I was like, oh my God. And so I was like, so happy. I went home the next day, Sunday, I went back to the shelter, and she's there. I'm like, oh my God, why is she still here? They go, oh, we have to do a home inspection. She's fine. She's fine. She's going to get adopted. So they took a picture, the Humane Society of Silicon Valley. I don't know if they still do this, but they would take an exit picture. And they actually used it on the front of their magazine. It was so good. It was Casey and the guy and the woman, and they were smiling so big, and so was Casey. And it was just the most beautiful. It was like a professional family portrait. And coincidentally enough, I saw that couple 2 years later in San Francisco at a restaurant. And I went up to them and I said, oh, this is who I am. I knew Casey. And they're like, oh my God, we love her so much. The husband was a karate teacher and he had a dojo, and she would go to the dojo every day. And they had a lot of Akita experience. They had Akitas before, and she was just living the best life possible. So what that told me was that, we disempower animals so much. We have to remind them of the power, because we're humans, right? We're telling them what to do all the time. We're always constantly, you can't do this. You have to do this. You have to take this, right? But in this Reiki space, in this beautiful space that we create, they're in charge. They have command. And now they start to rise into their power. So with Casey, she just rose into her power. It wasn't anything like I empowered her to do something. I just reminded her, you can choose. And I think any shelter animal can choose, because they can choose not to go with someone, right? They can act out. I remember when Shrek, my big pit bull that we still have, it was when I was fostering him. He was a foster fail. And so I found a family for him. And I didn't know, my boyfriend told Shrek, if you don't want to go with these people and you want to live with us, then you act like you're going to attack their dog. And I'm like, but he didn't tell me this. So I am like across a football field with Shrek. And he sees these people often just with this old, elderly, just senior dog that could barely walk. And he is freaking out worse than I've ever seen. And I told the people, I'm yelling, we're probably like half a football field. I'm like, we can't do this. He's so out of control. I'm so sorry. So they leave. I leave. I go home. I'm all, oh my God, it was so horrible. Shrek, there was no chance these people were going to take him. He was awful. He goes, oh yeah, I told him that if he didn't want to go, he could stay here. I'm like, what? Why did you do that? And he goes, you can stay now, Shrek. And Shrek started doing zoomies around the house. He was literally, he's like a huge pit bull, and he had arthritis then. He was 10, he's 15 now. And he's doing zoomies. I'm like, okay, word to the wise, could you please share this kind of stuff with me next time we foster a dog who's dog aggressive? But it was so amazing. We can empower our animals. They understand so much, which is why I say the night before you go, connect with them. And when we do the wild animal part, I'll tell you some really crazy stories that have happened with wild animals on this when you connect ahead of time. But we can empower dogs, and especially dogs. Dogs, they love us so much. They are so connected to us. There are so many more stories I can tell you about dogs, but I do know that Reiki and dogs Kathleen wrote, her second book, Reiki for Dogs. It's a great book. If you don't have it, get it. But dogs are so connected to us. And when our energy is off, their energy is off. But when we can sit there and create this beautiful healing space for them, then they can join us and they can start to heal with us. Because it's just like, Jill, we were asking about aggression. And Diane, I don't know if you're unmuted. I don't know if you had a question, but I'll get you in just a sec. Is that, it's just like if you have anxiety. So I have a friend, she's got horrible anxiety. And I can sit there and give her Reiki, but she has to let it go, right? She has to be willing to let it go. And sometimes we hang on to these things because they're a part of it. And I think that sometimes with animals, they're just so used to feeling that way that sometimes it's really hard to let go. So just having that patience and that love for them is really important. So Diane, I'm sorry, I just noticed you were unmuted. I didn't know if you had a question or not, and then I'll get to you, Mary Lynn.
No, I didn't have any questions.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great.
Okay.
Mary Lynn.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, yes. Has anyone had the experience that your cat begins to act like a dog in the way that they are? She greets us and it's just she appears to act more like a dog, our dog.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot. If you go on TikTok, you'll see that a lot. my brother had a cat that he had for years, and then he got a Rottweiler puppy, and the cat raised the dog, and the dog could have a great big huge bone. He's a Rottweiler, could have a great big huge bone, and that cat would come on his head and growl and take the bone. So yeah, I mean, they just learn. It's just learned behavior. It's like anytime you're anytime you're getting, okay, wait. Oh, Monica says, oh, okay, so here we go. Monica. Oh, and Monica, you know what? You might want to say something really fast too. Working with dogs in a shelter for every day for more than 5 years, I can really say dogs are amazing. Sometimes I'm so exhausted with all the work and the stress in the shelter and get frustrated and sad to see them behind bars every day and to know their stories and for how long some of them are already there and for how long some of them will stay there. And then I enter the cage and most of them are just so happy. And I think, how can you be so happy, this shitty, dirty, loud place? But they don't think about it. They just enjoy that moment, that minute I spend time with them. They just enjoy the love and attention I give them. And in that moment, they pull me in their happiness and I forget about everything else. And I just enjoy the love because they are love. And I am so deeply grateful I have them in my life as friends and teachers. Yes, I love that because, Monica is in an insanely busy shelter. And for her dogs to show that, and I know I'm going to share it again in our recap email, a link to their Facebook, the shelter where she works, because they just did a little birthday celebration for one of the dogs there. And it was so sweet. And the dog just, you could tell, just loved all of the attention. And they're just doing amazing work with 500 dogs. So it's a lot of work, but I love that, Monica. And Anne says, sometimes the low frequency of emotion dysfunction is embedded quite deeply. It's such a part of our identity. Exactly. And Alice says, such a great story about the Akita. It does help them to choose where their adopters and vice versa. Exactly, Alice. And Miranda says, thank you so much for the beauty. Oh, she has to go to work. So that was fun. So Alice, I didn't know if you were moving. I didn't know if you had a question. Just wanted to get to you real fast. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, thanks so much, Diane. It was great seeing you.
Sorry, no. I'm just really enjoying it all. It's fantastic stories. And I've just started working in a dog and cat rescue center. And the dogs, it's difficult with them because, as you say, they come out of their very small kennels and they're just over the top excited. And they're taken into this area where there's lots of toys and they're just really dashing around. And I just sit there and hope that, something will get to them. And there's one very shut down one who I did manage to really have a good connection with him because he was much quieter and he could see through the glass and I could see him and I was just sitting there and he just began to relax and he curled up and he went to sleep, and because he was very alert before. But the others come out and they're just kind of really crazy. But
that's okay, because it's kind of like with Monica when she was working with a dog that was really shut down and was like growling at people, just little by little, it starts to build on itself. It's, so every time you're going in there and sitting, Alice, and sharing your light, they're feeling it, right? And it could be also, we think about, okay, this is something, I'm so glad you brought this up. So we're thinking, okay, it's meditation time. We're all serious. Let's all relax. Blah, blah, we're looking at this. But here, they could also be expressing that they're accepting it by expressing joy, by feeling good in their bodies. Just like Shrek, felt really good in his body. He's going to run around. It's that feeling good about who you are and then allowing yourself to express it. So I think that you sitting there, even though they may not be doing the classic Reiki, I'm going to lay down, I'm going to yawn. And thank you so much for bringing this up, because it could look exactly like that. It could look like happiness. It could look like, I'm just going to be jumping around. And maybe they kind of stop and they take a little bit and then they jump around and do their thing and then they stop. And it's like, because who doesn't love love, right? Who is going to turn away that feeling of love and that feeling of support? So just keep doing that and do report back to us and let us know how this all works out. And I'm excited because you also work with horses too, don't you, Alice?
Mainly with horses.
Yeah. So in 2 weeks, next week, we won't have a session because I'm going to be traveling. But in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about horses. And horses, there are definitely things you have to be aware of. There's positions you can use with horses, and like, we don't use hands-on, but they like touch. And so if you are going to touch a horse, there's certain places you can touch a horse and certain places you shouldn't touch a horse. Kind of like a cat. You don't want to be putting your hands on a cat's belly. We didn't really talk about that last week, but a cat could bite you, scratch you. Same with a horse, but a horse could actually kick you or step on you or bite you. There's a lot to think about when you're going to be working with horses. So thank you so much, Alice, for contributing that bit about, animals can be happy. They could be in a great big room, or maybe, even if they're excited to see you and you're offering that Reiki, you can just sit and like calmly pet them and allow them to be happy and not get disappointed if they don't lay down and go to sleep.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we are running off time, but I would like to do just a 5 or maybe just a 2-minute. Maybe we'll just do the gratitude meditation just to close it off, and just to bring ourselves into balance and give gratitude for these beautiful beings, the dogs, and all the stories that we are sharing and we feel in our hearts. So we bring our hands into Gasho. We close our eyes to close out all outside distractions, and we set our intent that we're open to receive whatever it is we need most at this moment in time. We're open to receive the beautiful lessons of the dogs, and we're open to holding space for all who need it. And whenever you're ready, you can bring your hands face up or face down in your lap. And I'd love for you to bring to mind a dog that brings you immense joy. Just a dog you love deeply. Maybe it's a dog that's not yours. Maybe it's a dog you know. But just allow yourself to connect to your dog. Breathe into your belly, and on the release of your breath, imagine your breath is a light and you're connecting to your dog with this beautiful light. Breathing in love and breathing out light. And imagine your dog merging with you, their light and love, merging with your light and love. And in this space, truly understanding that we are all connected, that in this beautiful space of love, there is no separation. There is only peace, love, kindness, compassion. And take a moment and share deep gratitude with your dog. Tell them how much you love them, how much you appreciate them. And as you breathe in and out, allow your heart to expand this beautiful energy of love. Allow yourself to be reminded that truly only love matters. And we bring our hands into Gasho, to the prayer pose, hands together, palms together. And we give thanks to our dogs for joining us. We give thanks to the wisdom that they share with us. And we give thanks to all the love they share with us freely. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing this beautiful energy. And whenever you're ready, you can bring your hands down and open your eyes. And Hillary, I am so glad you're here. So Hillary's brand new to Animal Reiki, and this is so helpful. Yay, great. So I hope you can make it again. We won't have Wednesday next week, but we're going to be talking about horses. And even though maybe you haven't worked with horses, horses are incredible beings, just like dogs. I mean, all animals are incredible beings. But the horses are so wise. And like the story I shared about Kathleen, they're so patient with us and they're so understanding. So I'm excited to share with you some really incredible stories, interactions I've had with horses, and just how smart and loving they are and how much they truly want to support us. Remember, animals want to support this practice. They want to support our journey. They want to support who we are. So don't forget that. And as you go out in your day, bring that beautiful dog energy to your heart and share it with everyone in your world. Hey, Jill, it's so good to see you. I'm so excited to see you next week. Yeah. All right, everyone. I'll see you later, Jill. Yay. All right, everyone. Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.